Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Democratic Senator Chris Larson of Milwaukee is seeking re-election in the 7th Senate District. The election is November 6th. Chris, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve.
Same question for incumbent legislators. If you're re-elected, top priority next session?
Our big one, number one, is doing redistricting reform so that we can take the politics out of how lines are drawn. I think it's strange that there's only one party that believes in democracy and is going to push this as a big issue, and I think this is the one that we can actually get through. Everybody re-elected for the Senate this time, or elected, will have a say in what happens with redistricting in our state. And I think it's important that we lay down that, look, people's going to say Democrats have done this in the past, Republicans have done this in the past. No more. This has been abused. Gerrymandering has cut voters out of the equation, and I think we need to turn that around. So that'll be the first bill we take up.
Do you go after that with a statute or constitutional amendment?
I think we could go statute first, and if we have the votes, we can go constitutional amendment. But I think this is one that people really believe in. So I think we'd have the backing if it goes to an amendment and has to go to a vote.
Well, I think you just said that this election is really key to whether your party is at the table the next time lines are drawn, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the numbers are there for Democrats to be able to retake the Senate and provide balance in our state. The Assembly, you know, that's going to be decided in 2020. Who's at the table for that? So half the Senate is decided this time, and the governor is decided. So two of the main drawers of the lines are going to be up this cycle. So it's part of the conversation. It's a bigger picture thing, and it's something that has not been talked about, unfortunately, in the campaigns yet.
That's true, it hasn't. Let's talk about the next budget. This current state budget did increase spending on K-12, state aid for K-12.
Yeah.
Do we need a similar major increase in the next state budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Walker has had a tendency to do the worst things his first year out in his first part of his term, the first biennial budget, where he does the huge cuts. The largest cut to K-12 education was right after he took office. And then as he gets closer to election, he throws some money in. But to be clear, even the restoration of funds hasn't fully restored the cuts that have happened. We're still underwater. So I think at the very least we need to make up for the gap that has existed over the last 8 years before we even start talking about, okay, what do we do for per pupil increases on a steady basis? And I think making up for that gap and then adding some level of predictability for school entities in the future, I think is of the utmost importance.
If you needed 300, 400, 500 million more to boost state aid to K-12, how would you change the tax structure to get it, or don't you need to change the tax structure?
I mean, I think it'll take a number of different things. One is to end a lot of the huge agriculture and manufacturing tax credit, the huge giveaways that we have given away to industry that are not paying off in terms of job creation, that are not paying off in terms of helping our state's economy. I think using those funds at the front end from the state will help, and I think allowing local flexibility is important. Right now, all they have is the ability to do a referendum. Otherwise, they are inhibited by growth. And that's cutting them way back from being able to actually do what they need to. So we're seeing referendum after referendum coming up for a vote and passing. In one of my districts, South Milwaukee, they're looking at a 5-year series of referendums to make sure that they can be made whole over time. And it's something where they laid it out to the entire school district, and they said this is not the place that we want to be, but I think we made the case for public safety in a referendum. We can do it for our schools and why we need to do it. School board members and administrators should not be in that position. I think they're elected, they're trusted, they should be allowed to go directly to be able to fund schools for what's been cut from the state as it is.
So get rid of the levy limits on all local governments?
I think that they're, from school boards to county boards to common councils to the towns. They're all looking for flexibility to be able to have local control over how they run their departments. They can't do it right now, right? They're inhibited, and we're seeing cuts in police, cuts in fire. We're seeing the inability to be able to address infrastructure at the local level. And so I think we're going to have to look at overall what tools we can give them to be able to raise revenue, not just property taxes, as I think that we have among the highest property taxes, and I think we need to limit that, but offering other options. So if we're looking at things that other cities, other states have been creative with to make sure that the pain is spread out evenly so that everybody is paying their fair share.
Future of choice vouchers, which expanded in Milwaukee, Racine, and now statewide.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have to be held to the same level of accountability at the bare minimum to our public schools. They have to account for that. I mean, I'm not a fan. I think that they have been around now for 25, 26 years, and we still treat them with kid gloves. And I think after 25, 26 years, they're ready to move out and be on their own. And they have not produced better results than our schools. They have failed the promise of saying they're simply getting a ton of taxpayer money that somehow they're going to make our public schools better. That's not even true, and they stopped even trying to claim that. That was the birth of this idea in the first place. They also said it was going to be limited, right? The number of vouchers that would actually go out. Well, now we have a ton of voucher schools that are getting 100% of their funding from taxpayers. So they are private in name only. They're getting all of their money from us, and they're not accountable to us. They're doing things where they can pick and choose who they decide to teach, and then kicking them out, the harder to teach students, out to the public to be able to pick up the slack. That's not a level playing field. It's not sustainable, and we need to end it.
Some of the 8 Democrats that ran for governor said we could cut our prison population in half. We have 2 prisons that were built in the 1800s. Do you think we can eventually cut our prison population in half? Question 1. Question 2, do we need a new state prison?
I'm not a big fan of the idea of moving towards building another state prison. And I think that if there's a way to be able to restart the parole board, to be able to actually look at the justice system as a justice system and not as a punishment system, I think we can move to reducing the prison population by half, starting with those nonviolent offenders, starting with drug crimes where, look, these are people who are harming themselves, but should that be a reason why we're locking them away and basically ending their ability to get a job even after they're released? And I think there's much smarter ways that we can be looking at this. I think there's other models that we can look at for how to be able to do this. And I believe it's Georgia that has a criminal justice council that gets together on a regular basis and suggests bill changes, suggests ways to be able to make the system work, from preventing crimes in the first place, from early interventions when there are signs that somebody is headed down the wrong path, to afterwards, to making sure after a person is released they are rehabilitated and that they are active in not returning back to prison. And I think from beginning to end, I think we have not had that with this governor, who has decided that it's not worth his time to visit one of the entities that we spend more money on than we do on higher ed, to actually rejuvenate it and say, you know what, we're spending this much money, let's make sure that we're actually getting a payoff and we're actually getting people rehabilitated and back to productivity.
You've led your party in the Senate. How do you feel when Kimberly Clark says we need a vote by September 30 on tax breaks, tax benefits?
I mean, it's tough to take it seriously when it's public knowledge that they had a $3.3 billion operating profit for 2017. There is no need for this money. You know, they're just basically knocking on the door and saying, hey, we saw you're giving out some money for Foxconn. It'd be great, you know, if we could get some of that too. And I think that companies and corporations would be lining up faster than kids on Halloween for trick or treat if we decide to give that same kind of money to Kimberly Clark, where they are profitable, where they are doing well, where the economy is doing well, and where they are not at any dire need or in competitive disadvantage if they don't get this huge payout. I think this is a test. And I do hope that Wisconsin passes it, otherwise we're in trouble. That we're going to be dishing out this much money to every single company that that decides to call bluff and say that, yeah, if you don't give us a big payout, we're going to leave. We'll have no more money for schools, no more money for public safety, no more money for higher ed or for our roads or for anything, because we'll be handing it out to companies that, frankly, in this case, it is very clear they do not need the money.
The impasse in the Capitol over highway funding, bridges, maintenance, construction.
Yeah.
How would you like to see it broken?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's one of the ways that we'd like to look at is actually, one, re-indexing the gas tax. I think that was a big error when they decided to slash that without figuring out how to backfill it. That'll get us started. I think another way is to actually look at look, I'm a big fan of making sure that if we're going to collect taxes and we're going to collect fees, it should be from those who are causing the damage, who are going to use it the most, where it makes sense. And I think if you look at a lot of the roads where a lot of this damage is coming from, it's coming from heavier trucks. It's coming from these bigger 18-wheelers that are rolling down. It's not coming from hybrids. I don't know why we think that's a good idea to say we're going to tag a $100 fee on these lightweight, low-impact vehicles. We should be looking at where it comes from, larger trucks and those that are actually doing the damage. If that requires that money that they have to pay flows down, well, then we're paying the real cost. Otherwise, what we're being asked to do is to have the public pay and make up for the damage that's being done already. I think that's a place to start. It would be nice if the federal government actually came through and funded some of these roads. This is not just a problem for Wisconsin, it's a problem for the entire country. So we should be looking at that, but we can't wait for Washington to come save us. I think we have to come up with a balanced approach right now.
Could you vote to increase the gas tax or consider tolling?
Tolling, absolutely not.
Okay.
I am not a fan of tolling. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's us harming other folks who are coming in here, and it's inequitable in the way that it's distributed or the way that it's collected. And I think the only people a lot of people like it is because we have to pay it when we go down to Illinois, and so we're used to it on this side of the border. But if there were a way, trust me, man, if there was a way just to collect it from the Cubs fans when they're coming up here and ruining our games, I'd be all for it. But unfortunately, there's not a way to do that. So I think we have to look at other options.
The proposals that would legalize recreational and medical marijuana, where are you on that?
Those are mine. I wrote those, yes.
Yes, okay. Let's talk about health care. You're from Milwaukee, but what are your thoughts on protecting, preserving and expanding health care in rural areas?
Yeah, I mean, look, healthcare is healthcare. I think everyone should be able to have access to care that they can afford, that's going to keep them healthy, that's not going to preclude them because they have a pre-existing condition. I am somebody who had asthma from age 5, and so when I was out on my own trying to figure out insurance, I was splitting my medications and trying to figure that out, or going without medication completely. And I think it's a horrible thing that we would think that we're even that close to going back to. It was good that Obamacare fixed that, and it's silly for us to try and, for Walker and for Schimmel to try and push for a lawsuit to try and roll Wisconsin back and the country back. Where the people, when they get sick, when they need it most, they can't get care because either they're not eligible or they can't afford it. And I think that goes for everybody in the state, for urban and for rural.
Does state government have a role in recruiting and retaining doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals?
Look, I mean, I think having good medical schools will go along with that. And there's other programs that we should be implementing. I think higher ed, lower debt is one that helps keep people in the state after they graduate because they can use loan payments to offset their income tax payments. So I think it makes sense for us to continue to foster those medical schools in our state to make sure that they continue to be among the best in the country. And then once they're here, trying to keep them here, not just with our culture and the culture of Wisconsin and the things that we enjoy, but saying, look, you're probably going to have some school loans. If we can help offset that by you staying here, being a state resident, and being able to pay off, as you pay it off, being able to offset that, I think that makes sense, and I think that'll help continue to build a quality medical community that we already have.
The partnership between state government and Delta Dental that subsidizes dental clinics in medically underserved areas, should that remain a priority in the next MA budget?
I took part in the event they had over at State Fair where they were providing care, not Delta Dental, but for the Dental Association and a lot of dentists and dental students from Marquette. And it was shocking to see how long people would wait and how far they would travel for this 2-day event to get needed care. In some cases, extractions, in some cases, getting dentures, in some cases, just getting a check, getting a cavity that I cannot imagine how long that they've had to deal with that, how distracting that would be. So thinking about that for the general population, thinking of the number of people is probably just a small subset, right, of people who are going through this, much less kids, you know, who don't have the option to be able to come to State Fair or to come to one of these events when they happen. I think it's important for us to lobby to make sure that Medicaid payments are actually covering this, and to make sure that dental care is something that's covered, especially for students, but across the state. You can't think when you have a toothache.
AARP estimates that there are 578,000 caregivers in Wisconsin. And so AARP asks whether we need a new state law or a new state regulation that would require hospitals to recognize and work with caregivers when someone they love is hospitalized. Is that issue on your screen at all? Have you heard from many caregivers?
No, we have heard from caregivers in terms of how it is not, how it's not as regulated as it should be, that the pay is all over the place, and that this is an industry that is not being watched as closely as it should, especially considering that the number of caregivers required is going to continue to grow, given the aging population, given the medical advances that we have, that people are living longer. I think it makes sense for us to try and more professionalize the workforce, so that it's not just a matter of some of these folks who are getting paid just above what you would get paid working at a McDonald's. I think that's not sustainable. That's something we should be looking at.
Final question, differences between you and your opponent on November 6th?
I think the big one is that a lot of these issues we've been tackling for years, and I've been in the minority virtually the entire time. I think there's 3 months where we weren't, and then we never came into session during that time because of the way things were set up. It was in the summer. We have a number of bills. We have a number of things that we're looking to advance, or I'm looking to advance once we get there. And I think it's important to continue that. Everything from making sure that seniors are protected from abusive living facilities, to making sure that opioid companies are held accountable. We've written bills, to marijuana legalization, to restoring funds to K-12. There's a number of bills that we have written that I'm excited to be able to move forward and advance when we come back in the majority this next cycle.
Thank you. Democratic Senator Chris Larson of Milwaukee is seeking re-election in the 7th Senate District. The election is November 6th. Chris, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.